Hey guys, welcome back to Prestige Catfish, and today we're going to wrap up our series called Shifting into the Right Gear with the last episode, okay? And the last episode is titled Casting Your Vote on the Pole. And if you can probably figure out, we're going to talk about the different types of rods that we can be used when we're going catfishing or starting our catfishing adventures, okay? And I know it's a lot to choose from out there. And basically, you have to decide out what you're going to be doing with it, okay? And what to look for. So, first, let's start out with the type of rod that you're going to be looking for, okay? And it's going to boil down to two things. If you have a bait casting or a casting rod, if you have a bait caster or a casting reel, or if you have a spinning reel, you're going to need a spinning rod, okay? You can have two of the exact same type of rods, but one would be for casting and one would be for spinning reels. So that's the first thing you have to look at. Okay, what type of reels do I have to make sure that I pair my rod up with it the way it needs to be? So once you figure that out, the next thing that you want to look at is what am I fishing for? Okay, what type of rod do I need? And what I mean by that is you have a different types of rods. You have graphite, you have composite, you have E-glass, you have Z-glass, you have S-glass, okay? So let's look into each one of those. The most common one is a graphite rod, okay? They're fairly cheap. They have a lot of bend to them, but they're not as strong, okay? So if you're just fishing for, small eater type catfish and box fish and bass and things like that, those will work just fine. Just a graphite rod. Now, would they hold up to the abuse year after year? I've broken a lot of them. So, depends on what type of fishing you want to do. The next type is E-glass, okay? And E-glass is very strong. It has a good blank back to it, okay? So, it's very strong. The thing about E-glass is they might not have the most sensitive tips at the end of them, okay? For setting hooks and things like that. But they will handle fish. They will handle fish. They'll handle big fish because they're very strong in the back end of it. And a lot of catfishing rods or that are affordable or made out of E-glass, okay? And then you have S-glass. S-glass is a little bit stronger. It's a little bit more sensitive at the tip and it holds a little bit more weight to it. So of course they're going to be a little bit more expensive, okay? So those rods right there are made for handling big fish. You'll see a lot of your big game, fishing rods out there made of that type of material. And the last is composite, and that's a mixture of both graphite and some type of EOS glass, and those are very expensive. They're very strong, very sensitive on the tip, but you're going to pay a price for them. You're looking anywhere from between $150 to $200 for a reel. The one I like to use the most is E-glass, and that's what I love. But I also make sure that when I'm picking out my rods and I do my research that, I still have a good flexibility at my tip a little bit for when I reel down on my circle hook, so we can go ahead and get a good hook set in it, excuse me, or if I want to set the hook manually myself. So my preferred go-to is E-glass. It's about the middle of the price range for a good E-glass rod. You can find a lot of them out there. Personally, I like Pro Angler. It's a maker here in the DFW area of Texas, Northeast Texas. He makes excellent rods, and that's what I prefer. So once you look at that, then you want to look at the type of rod. You have, light, you have medium heavy, and then you have heavy. And what that is going to be the action of the rod. How flexible is it? How loose is it? For catfishing, I would say nothing less than medium heavy. Okay. You can go medium if you're just using it for small channels and, blues. It'll work just fine. But if you want to get into the bigger game and the bigger fish, medium heavy is the least that I would go. And that's because medium heavy will still give you a little bit of flexibility, but it still give you that strong blank that you're looking for. And to fight a big fish or to winch a big fish out of the mud. So I would always stick with medium heavy. I would never use, a light or a medium rod unless I'm bass fishing or crappie fishing or pan fishing. But this is about catfish. So medium heavy is what I would use. Now you can go heavy too. Heavy is going to be a little bit thicker. It's not going to have as much as flexibility at the tip, but it's going to be strong. It's going to be real strong. They're going to be a little bit heavier too, so they're a little bit harder to cast. So that's what we're going to look at. Medium heavy to heavy is where you want to stick around, depending on what type of fish you're fishing for. So the next thing we're going to look at is size. The size of the rod. Do I need a 6 foot? Do I need a 7 foot? Do I need a 7/6 foot? Do I need an 8 foot? Do I need a 10 foot? Do I need a 12 foot? And that all depends on your fishing environment, where you're fishing, and how you're fishing. Okay. Me personally, I use anywhere from 8 foot to 12 foot. Okay. Most of my rods are 10 to 12 foot. And that's because that length gives me the casting ability to get out far from the bank. It's pairing the right reel with it. I can get out pretty far. And that's what I'm looking for when I'm bank fishing. I want to be able to get out there to those trees, to get out there to that drop off or to that ledge, and not be so close to the bank when I'm looking for my big fish. Now, if you're just looking for, again, either small fish that are close around, you can go with a 7 foot or 8 foot rod. I mean, that will work just fine for you. But if you want to go out distance wise, you want to cast 60, 70, 80 yards, you're going to need at least 10 feet to get out there. And if you're bank fishing, that's what you want. Now, if you're fishing out of a boat, you don't need that casting distance, okay? So you can easily stick with not a 6, but a 7 or an 8 foot rod, okay? Because basically you're just gonna go up to where the fish is and you're gonna cast them out and you're gonna fish there. Or if you're gonna be dragging baits or you're gonna be suspending baits, I mean, you're not really casting out that far, okay? But even know that you don't need a longer rod, because you don't want to get those long rods all in the boat and tangled up. You still want to make sure you get a 7 or 8 foot and medium heavy or heavy, especially if you're going to be dragging baits, because it's going to get caught up on the bottom on something. You want to have that rod be strong enough to kind of work itself away when you're drifting and things like that. So if you're boat fishing, 7 to 8 feet will work just fine. And if you're bank fishing, depends on what you go. If you're fishing shallows and flooded cattails and things like that, 7 or 8 foot are fine. If you want to get out there, 50, 60, 70 up to 80, 90 yards, you want to get a rod that has a good length on it, about 10 or 12 feet. Okay. So that's the lengthwise. And the last thing that I want to tell you what to look for in your fishing rods is the quality of your eyes on the rod, okay? And the number of them. You can see the cheaper rods may not have as many eyes on them as a more expensive rod. And my pro angler rods that I use, they use stainless steel eyes, and they work phenomenal, okay? So that's one reason I like it. And they have a lot of eyes. I think they have like an eye going every half foot or so. And what that does is, when you're casting big rods like that, you want a lot of eyes on the rod, because not only can you cast far, you can control your cast and you can have precision casting and put that bait where you want to. So that's one of the reasons that the number of eyes on the rod is so important. The more eyes you have, the more control you have over your casting ability. And that's very, very important. Because if you want to put it right in that spot on that drop off, or right before that tree, or right before that stump without getting hung, that's going to be very important. And then the type of eyes are important too. I love stainless steel, inserts and things like that, because it depends on the type of line you use too. Because if you have a cheaper rod with cheaper eyelets and things like that, for instance, braid will cut right through some of the eyes when you're casting. And then that's going to become a no-no, because then it's going to fray your line and make you end up missing a big fish because it breaks off at the wrong time and point. So that's another thing to look for. If you're going to be fishing braided, make sure that you have a rod with good, strong eyelets on them. I fish mono, so I really don't have that problem, but I still want a good eye because I want my rods to last. And the better build and better quality of a rod is going to be more expensive. You're going to start getting to the $50 to $100 range for a good rod of that nature. But it'll be worth it in the long run because they last to the abuse and they're strong. So those are my recommendations for you casting your lure on the pole. Okay, when you go look into these stores and you're getting started, look at the type of rod it is, look at the length, look at the eyes, look at the weight of it, medium, heavy, heavy, and then go from there. And I always keep in mind, okay, what am I fishing for? What type of fish am I fishing for? Am I fishing for small fish or am I fishing for trophies? And that'll help you to make your determination too. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment below. The page if you like the content. We got some more good videos coming out. And guys, thank you for joining in and take care and tight lines.